The top 13 funniest football moments ever. Football is a game that can be very brutal. The disappointment that comes along with football is something that fans from all across the world have likely experienced. Now enough with the gloom and doom. The top 13 most hilarious moments in the history of football are presented to you by Barney Corkill, who brings you the lighter side of football. Number 13. Dispute between Matt Letizia and Massimo Tabi. It's you, Massimo Tabi. If you were not included in the list of funny football moments, the list would be incomplete. The relatively enormous shoes that Peter Schmeichel had left behind were filled by him after he was signed. This gaffe was, however, caused by those boots, or more accurately, studs, which were the culprits. At least, that is what he asserts. Regardless matter what Tabi does for the remainder of his career, he will forever be remembered in England for allowing the ball to make its way between his legs after making the most straightforward of saves. It was not Peter Schmeichel who he was. Number 12. The case of Olivier Bernard versus Laurent Robert. It's the first time that two players from Newcastle will reach this list, but it will not be the last time. A shot that was one of the most difficult in the league was taken by Laurent Robert. Therefore, it is going to be painful if you were struck in the head by one of these from a distance of only 10 yards. The fact that Bernard made an effort to maintain his erect position before falling backward and eventually landing on the ground would have made this situation even more amusing. It was reported that Robert was dissatisfied with Bernard's poor performance before that, and as a result, he hit the ball as hard as he could, but Bernard's head managed to get in the way. Number 11. Phil Babb versus the post. Both Casserai, who plays for Chelsea, and Phil Babb, who plays for Chelsea, valiantly put the ball in the net. He also managed to put a ball on the wrong side of the post, which is a really unfortunate occurrence. I hurt. There's not much more that I need to say about this. All you need to do is watch it and feel sorry for poor Phil Babb and his lack of children in the future. Number 10. Didier Drogba versus Jens Lehmann. For the sake of fairness, I am certain that Drogba trod on a particularly slick patch of grass at precisely the same moment that Jens Lehmann savagely pushed him. And I am also certain that Drogba, in turn, just caught Lehmann off balance. I mean, two fully grown professional athletes wouldn't be able to lose that easily, would they? To answer your question, they would, and they did. Not only is it funny to behold, but it also demonstrates everything that is wrong with a modern Premier League football team. The unfortunate news for these two, however, is that Tom Daley has just surpassed them to the final qualifying position for Beijing. Number 9. Kieran Dyer versus Lee Bauer. The majority of the time, football fights are fascinating to watch. However, the situation is even more serious when it occurs between two players who are on the same team. Bauer wanted the ball, but Dyer refused to give it to him. Following the example of students in the 8th grade, Bauer went up to Dyer and punched him in the face. They were both sent red cards, leaving Newcastle with 9 players on the field. After a few days had passed, all that was required was a grin and a handshake in front of the cameras, and everything was back to normal. Except that they continued to despise one another. Number 8. The slip of the medic. I may be considered an old-fashioned person, but I was under the impression that the first aiders were there to assist the player who was injured when they arrived. However, it appears that this medic has had enough of all the diving that has been going on in football today, as he or she has unleashed a vicious two-footed tackle on the player who is currently down hurt. Okay, so it could have been nothing more than a simple slip, but it was still hilarious to watch. And if that player was indeed pretending to be injured, then it must have been a form of karma. Could it be that we wouldn't get as much diving if all of the medical professionals were like that? Number 7. Keeper of one's own goal. Football is a sport that unfortunately has several own goals. I don't believe there are any that are as foolish as this one, but there are some that are more remarkable than others. In Japan, the goalkeeper for Minami threw the ball directly into his own goal rather than passing it to one of his players. This occurred during the match. It is interesting to note that even though individuals are not permitted to score directly from a throw, this goal was counted, and the goalkeeper was compelled to endure the humiliation of taking the ball out of his net in front of thousands of people. Number 6. Paulo Deano versus Paul Alcock. To answer your question, yes, that crazy Italian Paulo Deano is making his second appearance on this list. The referee, Paul Alcock, showed Deano a red card after he got into a little altercation with Martin Keown and a few other Arsenal players. A jumble show from Deano came next, and Paul Alcock ended up making one of the most humiliating falls in the history of the sport. It appeared as though he had lost his balance while out drinking. He appeared to be in a stupor. While Deano was leaving the pitch, Nigel Winterburn shared his thoughts with him and let him know what he thought of him. The smallest movement that Deano made was enough to silence him completely. He flinched enormously. Number 5. The referee takes a tumble. It is a common belief that referees are chosen because they have a passion for football, but are not very good at the game. This does provide some evidence in support of that idea. The sight of referees falling over is something that all of us enjoy, but this one is possibly the finest of them all. An attempt is made by him to throw the ball back by performing a slight backheel, but he manages to fall over and land directly on his embarrassed face through some means. Number 4. Robbie Savage versus everyone. Robbie Savage is not the most well-known football player in the world, as this is a reasonable assumption to make. It appears from this video that he is not the luckiest person either. He appears to be in the wrong place at the wrong moment throughout the entire day. In addition, I am certain that the fans could not possibly think of a player who is more deserving of it than Robbie Savage. Any one of these films, whether it be the assaults on him by his teammates, his opponents, or even the referee, has the potential to be included on this list and be considered for inclusion. Rin Higuita's scorpion kick comes in third. Just Rin Higuita would act in such a manner. Higuita decided to liven things up a bit by performing the now famous scorpion kick, as the ball was coming in from Jamie Redknapp. Instead of catching the ball as a typical goalkeeper would, Higuita chose to do such a thing. To this day, football enthusiasts all around the world continue to attempt to do the scorpion kick, and it is something that practically everyone is aware of. This undoubtedly sticks out as the most insane moment in a career that has been both strange and fantastic for a goalkeeper who is completely insane. Number 2. The own goal of Chris Brass. Without a doubt, the most hilarious own goal ever. Certainly the most hilarious thing I've ever witnessed. While Chris Brass was attempting to clear the ball over his head, he accidentally smashed it into his face, which resulted in the ball being placed in the net. The fact that Brass smashed his nose in this strange accident is a further insult to the injury, or more accurately, an insult to the damage. It's even more hilarious when you consider that. Number 1. Stretcher mistakes. Within the scope of this category, there are 2. I believe that the first one is the best, since after they have spent a good few seconds deciding which way they will walk, they still end up going in opposite directions. Just try to picture yourself as the player who is wounded in the second. I do not doubt that if you were injured and lying on the stretcher, that would be one of the things that you would want to avoid happening the most. Even though there were a few more stretcher faults, I chose the 2 that I considered to be the most significant. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to stay updated with our latest content. See you in the next video.